command figures, where power becomes legacy.
Hello, we are back here with Command Figures.
Glad to be here for this one.
Yeah, and today, the mission of this deep dive is to completely unpack the life, the meteoric rise, and the ultimate, really spectacular downfall of Pablo Escobar and the Medellín Cartel.
It is a massive topic.
It is. Just looking at the stack of sources we have on the table today, it is honestly staggering. We are pulling from detailed biographies, academic papers analyzing his political influence, and, in-depth historical analyses of police corruption and narco-terrorism.
Right, and it is important to note, right from the start, as we navigate the actions of the Colombian government, the rebels, the cartels, and the paramilitaries mentioned in these sources, we are remaining strictly impartial.
Exactly. We are not endorsing any viewpoints here, just laying out the facts exactly as they are recorded in the historical documents. But man, what a story it is.
Truly.
Think about the sheer scale for a moment. You are looking at a man who started out as a petty thief, right? And he grew to become a figure so powerful, he literally offered to pay off his entire nation's foreign debt.
Which is just an absurd level of wealth.
Yeah, and he waged an actual literal war against a sovereign government. It is almost hard to wrap your mind around. How does someone even begin to accumulate that kind of leverage over a whole country? I mean, he wasn't born into some established crime family.
Not at all. To really understand the machinery behind this empire, you have to look at the environment that forged him. We're going to trace this chronologically. The historical record shows he was born Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria on December 1st, 1949.
Right, in the town of Rio Negro.
Exactly, Rio Negro, Colombia. His parents were entirely working class, his father was a farmer, and his mother was a school teacher. So you have this incredibly humble beginning, but it is set against the backdrop of one of the most brutal periods in Colombian history.
Ah, right.
An era known simply as La Violencia.
I saw that mentioned in the biographies. It was a massive partisan civil war, right?
Yeah.
This constant bloodshed in the countryside.
It was a horrific period of unrest. You really cannot overstate the psychological impact this had on the people living through it. There's a deeply harrowing detail in our source texts that illustrates what Escobar was exposed to as a child.
Yeah, the story about the schoolhouse.
Yes. During La Violencia, his mother was sheltering in a small rural schoolhouse where she taught. Outside, a partisan mob had gathered. The historical accounts described how this mob actually hung liberal peasants by their feet from the cross beams of the schoolhouse.
Oh my God.
And they decapitated them. His mother and the children were trapped inside, with blood literally seeping under the door into the hallway.
Just completely trapped in there.
Right, until the military finally arrived to disperse the crowd. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this immense trauma created an entire generation that was deeply accustomed to extreme violence.
That makes a lot of sense.
You have millions of people growing up feeling entirely alienated from a central government that they viewed as either useless or corrupt. It set the perfect stage for a populist anti-establishment figure to eventually emerge and exploit that exact alienation.
When you put it like that, it makes sense why the later violence didn't seem to faze him. He grew up marinating in it. And you can see that ruthless ambition kick in pretty early, too.
Oh, absolutely.
The sources mention he made a vow to his friends as a teenager that he would kill himself if he wasn't a millionaire by the time he was 30.
A very intense thing for a kid to say.
Yeah. But he didn't just stumble into the drug trade immediately. The hustle started on the streets with petty stuff.
It did. Throughout the late 1960s and early 70s, he was involved in smuggling contraband, stealing stereos, and running kidnapping schemes for ransom.
I read he even had a racket where he would literally steal heavy marble gravestones from local cemeteries.
Yes, he would sand down the inscribed names and resell them.
That is just wild.
But the major pivot happens in the mid to late 1970s. The global demand for cocaine was just beginning to skyrocket.
Especially in the United States.
Exactly, particularly in the US. And Escobar realized the profit margins were astronomical compared to anything else he was doing.
So he teams up with the Ochoa brothers, right? And that is the birth of the Medellín Cartel. But from what I read in the texts, they didn't just join the drug trade, they completely revolutionized it.
They industrialized it. Before them, smuggling was a chaotic, fragmented enterprise. People were hiding small amounts of product in their luggage on commercial flights.
Basically just mules.
Right. Escobar and his partners brought corporate logistics to the underworld. They purchased fleets of light aircraft, bought off radar operators, and built secret airstrips in the jungles.
It was a full-on supply chain.
They essentially created an unbroken, highly efficient supply chain from the coca fields in the Andes directly to the streets of Miami.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the numbers from our sources regarding the wealth this generated are just mind-blowing. By the 1980s, the Medellín Cartel controlled 80% of the entire world's cocaine market.
80%. It is staggering.
You are talking about smuggling up to 15 tons of it a day into the U.S. And the profits. The academic papers estimate they were pulling in $420 million per week.
Per week.
Let that sink in for a second. If you were making that kind of money, you wouldn't even know where to put it.
Well, they literally didn't know where to put it. The cash flow was so overwhelmingly massive that they had warehouses packed to the ceiling with $100 bills.
Just stacks of cash sitting there.
Yeah. The financial ledgers and the historical documents show they were writing off 10% of their cash every year, amounting to hundreds of millions of dollars, simply because rats were eating the physical bills in storage.
Rats eating millions of dollars.
Or the money was rotting from water damage. They were spending thousands of dollars a month just purchasing rubber bands to hold the stacks of cash together.
That is insane. And with that kind of endless, untraceable wealth, he builds his personal playground, Hacienda Nápoles. I was looking at the descriptions of this place, and it sounds like a Bond villain's lair mixed with a theme park.
It really does.
It was a 20-square-kilometer estate. He built a private airport just for his personal use, a full-sized bull ring, and a private zoo. He was illegally flying in giraffes, elephants, and hippos from Africa just because he could.
But here is the critical thing to understand about that era. To maintain that level of wealth and to operate a massive fleet of illegal aircraft with such absolute impunity, you need more than just money.
Right, you need power.
You need to entirely neutralize the state apparatus. You have to make sure the police look the other way, the judges throw out the cases, and the politicians pass the laws you want.
And this is where Escobar introduced his notorious trademark philosophy.
Exactly. Plata o plomo, which translates to silver or lead.
The ultimate ultimatum.
What's fascinating here is the brutal psychological efficiency of this binary choice. Imagine you are a local magistrate in Colombia at the time. Escobar's men approach you regarding a seized shipment.
Right.
The message is simple. You either accept a massive, life-changing bribe, the silver, or you take a bullet to lead. There is no third option where you just do your job and go home safely.
Because if you try to be brave and refuse the bribe,
They don't just kill you, they kill your family. The sources explain that this strategy was paralyzingly effective because it fundamentally broke the incentive structure of the judicial system.
it forces everyone to be corrupt just to survive.
It was a perfectly designed machine of political influence built on a foundation of absolute, inescapable terror.
And it creates this terrifying reality where nobody knows who is on the cartel's payroll and who isn't. But while he is terrorizing the authorities behind closed doors, he is playing a completely different game out in the open.
A very calculated public relations game.
Right. He starts pouring his drug money into public relations, specifically targeting the extreme poverty in Medellín. He actually goes into a massive garbage dump where thousands of desperately poor people are living in squalor, and he just builds an entire neighborhood for them.
Yes, Barrio Pablo Escobar. He provided solid brick housing for 13,000 people. He built soccer fields, established food programs, and handed out crisp cash in the slums.
It is brilliant, really.
He was providing the basic infrastructure and social safety nets that the actual government had completely failed to deliver for decades.
Which is a brilliant, if incredibly cynical move. Because if you are one of those 13,000 people, you don't care where the money came from. He gave you a roof. To them, he was Robin Hood.
Exactly, and that cultivated a fiercely loyal populist base. These people revered him. They acted as a massive citywide early warning system, tipping off his men whenever the police were mounting a raid.
A human shield, basically.
But this popular support also fueled his ultimate ambition. He didn't just want to be a wealthy outlaw hiding on a farm. He craved the legitimate respectability that the traditional Colombian elites had always denied him.
He wanted to be a real politician.
So, leveraging this grassroots popularity, he runs for office. In 1982, Escobar was elected as an alternate representative to the Colombian Congress.
Wow.
He walked into the government chambers with diplomatic immunity, openly dreaming of one day running for president of Colombia.
But I imagine the actual political establishment wasn't just going to let the world's most famous drug trafficker sit in Congress and eventually run the country. How did that all fall apart?
It unraveled very publicly in 1983. A newly appointed justice minister named Rodrigo Lara Bonilla decided he had had enough.
He called him out.
He stood up in the halls of Congress and explicitly exposed Escobar's direct ties to the international cocaine trade. It was a massive public humiliation. Escobar was pressured out of his political position.
And they didn't stop there.
No. Shortly after that, the government, working closely with the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, launched a massive raid on a jungle laboratory complex known as Tranquilandia.
I read the stats on that raid. It was unprecedented. They seized and destroyed something like 14 tons of processed cocaine and over 10,000 drums of precursor chemicals.
It was a massive logistical operation.
It was an estimated billion-dollar hit to the cartel's operations.
It was a monumental embarrassment for Escobar.
Yeah.
It proved definitively that his political career was dead and that the establishment was coming for him. He could no longer simply buy his way into the highest echelons of power.
So he retaliated.
He did.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the moment he realizes the political door is permanently closed, he pivots. It is no longer about buying influence, it is about outright war.
Yes.
In April 1984, he orders his hitmen to assassinate Justice Minister Lara Bonilla. They gun him down in his car on the streets of Bogota. You don't just assassinate a sitting minister unless you are declaring war on the state itself.
And at the absolute center of this war was the one thing Escobar truly feared, which was extradition.
Being sent to the U.S.
He was terrified of the Colombian government passing laws that would allow him to be sent to the United States to face justice. In a U.S. federal court, his massive wealth and his local network of intimidated judges would mean absolutely nothing.
He couldn't bribe a judge in Miami.
Exactly. Our sources quote him directly on this, stating his infamous mantra, "Better a tomb in Colombia than a prison cell in the United States."
Wow.
Every single act of terror he committed from that point on was systematically designed to force the government to outlaw extradition.
And the escalation of that terror is just gut-wrenching to read about. It wasn't just targeting politicians anymore, it was mass violence.
Stayed under siege.
In November 1985, a heavily armed leftist guerrilla group called M19 attacked the Supreme Court of Colombia. They rolled in, took hundreds of hostages, and specifically targeted the rooms containing the extradition files, burning them all.
A very convenient target.
Right. By the time the military retook the building, half the justices of the Supreme Court were dead. The historical consensus from our sources strongly links cartel funding to this exact operation.
And the violence only intensified as the decade closed. In December 1989, Escobar ordered the bombing of the DOS, which is the Colombian National Police Headquarters.
With a bus bomb, right?
Yes, they used a bus loaded with half a ton of dynamite. The explosion decimated entire city blocks, killed over 50 people, and injured hundreds more.
Just brutal.
But perhaps the most horrifying escalation detailed in our documents occurred just weeks before that, in November 1989, with the bombing of Avianca Flight 203.
This one is just staggering. It was a routine domestic passenger flight. Escobar's men planted a bomb in the cabin simply because they believed a presidential candidate named Cesar Gaviria was going to be on board. The bomb detonated midair, killing all 101 passengers and the crew, plus people on the ground from the debris. And you mentioned it killed 2 American citizens as well, which obviously dragged the U.S. government even deeper into the conflict. But wait, did they even get the candidate?
No. That is the tragic irony of the event. Cesar Gaviria, the intended target, had canceled his flight at the very last minute due to security concerns.
He wasn't even on the plane.
He wasn't even on the plane. The sheer disregard for innocent human life was astounding. Escobar was intentionally attempting to break the psychological will of the entire nation through mass civilian casualties.
If you blow up a commercial airliner, you cross a line where a government can no longer just try to arrest you normally. But at the same time, the country was just bleeding. The public was exhausted by the daily bombings.
They're desperate for it to stop.
And that brings us to 1991, which has to be one of the most bizarre political compromises in modern history.
It truly highlights the absolute frailty of the Colombian state at that moment. In 1991, the government actually bowed to the pressure. They voted to amend the Constitution to officially outlaw the extradition of Colombian citizens.
So Escobar won that battle.
He did. In exchange, Escobar agreed to end the terrorism and surrender to authorities, but he did not go to a state penitentiary. He was allowed to design and build his own prison on his own land, and he handpicked the guards.
Unbelievable.
It was a facility called La Catedral.
I mean, calling it a prison is practically a joke. The sources list the amenities, and it sounds like a luxury resort.
It essentially was.
He built a full-size soccer field where he would invite professional players to come have exhibition matches. He had a giant customized dollhouse built for his daughter to play in when she visited. There was a fully stocked bar, a jacuzzi, a natural waterfall, and this massive telescope.
The telescope detail is fascinating.
Yeah, he literally set up a telescope on the ridge so he could look down into the valley at his family's home in the city of Medellin. He was sitting in a luxury spa, continuing to run his global cocaine empire via radio, all while technically claiming to be a prisoner of the state. How did the government justify this to the public?
They viewed it as the only pragmatic way to stop the bombings in the streets. But Escobar's own paranoia and brutal nature eventually shattered this fragile truce.
What?
While operating from inside La Catedral, he began to suspect some of his own top lieutenants, specifically Fernando Galeano and Gerardo Moncada, of skimming money from the cartel's profits.
Well, that is never a good thing to be accused of by Escobar.
No, he had them quietly brought up to the prison. Once inside, they were tortured, murdered, and their bodies were burned or dismembered.
Right inside his own prison.
Exactly. When the government intelligence agencies got wind of this grotesque violation of their agreement, President Gaviria realized the embarrassment was too great. He ordered the military to surround the compound and transfer Escobar to a real, secure military base.
So the army rolls up in July 1992 to finally move him. And what happens? He literally just walks out the back gate.
Just walked away.
He and his men slip right through the military perimeter into the fog of the surrounding mountains, sparking the largest manhunt in the country's history.
This raises an important question. How do you actually catch a man who essentially owns the city, who has eyes and ears on every street corner and unlimited resources to pay them?
You can't just send beat cops after him.
Right. The government realized conventional police tactics would never work, so they formed the search block. This was a highly specialized 600-man elite police unit trained by U.S. Delta Force and the CIA, with the sole exclusive mission of hunting him down.
A dedicated strike force.
But simultaneously, a much darker, much more ruthless alliance emerged in the shadows. A vigilante paramilitary group formed, calling themselves Los Pepes, which stands for People Persecuted by Pablo Escobar.
And Los Pepes were not playing by any legal rulebook.
Not at all.
According to the declassified documents in our stack, this vigilante group was primarily funded by Escobar's fiercest business rivals, the Cali cartel. But it wasn't just cartel versus cartel.
That is the complex part.
Yeah, the sources strongly suggest they were quietly aided by rogue police officers and elements of the state intelligence apparatus. Is that right? The government was essentially passing intelligence to a rival drug cartel to fund a death squad.
That is exactly what the historical analysis points to. It was an incredibly murky, gray area of warfare. While the search block operated above ground, raiding properties and making official arrests, Los Pepes operated entirely underground.
Matching Escobar's own brutality blow for blow.
Exactly. They didn't bother with arrests. They assassinated his lawyers, burned his estate to the ground, and murdered his family members and financial managers.
Wow.
They systematically dismantled his entire support network through pure terror, leaving him completely isolated.
It was a total scorched earth campaign. It forced Escobar from being a billionaire who commanded a private army into a desperate fugitive hiding in dirty safe houses.
He was running out of options.
He couldn't even use the radio or the telephone for more than a few minutes because he knew the intelligence agencies were constantly trying to triangulate his signal. And that brings us to the inevitable climax of the timeline.
The final days.
On December 1993, just one day after he celebrated his 44th birthday in hiding, he makes a fatal mistake.
He stayed on the radio too long. He was making a call to his son, Juan Pablo. The search block technicians finally locked onto the transmission signal.
They tracked the signal to a 2-story house in a middle-class neighborhood in Medellin called Los Olivos. The tactical teams surround the house, burst through the front doors, and a massive firefight erupts.
Total chaos.
Escobar tries to escape. He scrambles out of a second-story window and tries to run across the clay-tiled roof of the house next door. But he is gunned down.
Right there on the roof.
It leads to that highly publicized, iconic photograph taken by DEA agent Steve Murphy, showing the search block officers smiling and posing over Escobar's bloody, barefoot body on the roof. It is the definitive image signaling the end of the Medellín Cartel.
Though, as our sources carefully note, even the exact details of his death carry lingering theories.
Right, the final shot.
Yes. The autopsy reports show he was shot in the leg, the torso, and received a fatal bullet straight through his right ear. To this day, there is intense historical debate over who actually fired that final fatal shot.
Was it the search block?
Was it a search block police sniper who finally took him down? Was it a member of the vigilante group Los Pepes who had secretly infiltrated the raid? Or did Escobar, true to the vows he made as a teenager, turn his own weapon on himself to avoid the humiliation of capture and extradition?
Better a tomb in Colombia.
Exactly. The historical record remains slightly ambiguous on the exact origin of that specific bullet. The macro result was absolute. The reign of Pablo Escobar and the monopoly of the Medellín Cartel was permanently over.
So, what does this all mean? When you step back and look at the entirety of this deep dive, it is astonishing to consider the trajectory of this one life. You have a man who built an empire capable of challenging a sovereign nation using the brutal psychology of silver or lead.
A psychology that fundamentally broke the state.
But ultimately, that empire collapsed under the unbearable weight of its own escalating violence. His frontal assault on the state forced the government to militarize, break the rules, and crush him. And the irony is, as the sources point out, his death didn't end the drug trade.
Not even slightly.
It just paved the way for his rivals, the Cali Cartel, to quietly take over the market because they operated like a stealthy, risk-averse corporation rather than a loud terrorist organization.
Exactly. The violence was the engine of his rise, but it was also the absolute guarantee of his undoing. But I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over, drawing directly from the reality of Colombia today.
Okay.
Think back to Hacienda Nápoles, that massive surreal estate Escobar built at the height of his power with the private zoo and the airstrips. This was the epicenter of one of the deadliest criminal empires in modern history, a place funded entirely by infinite suffering, global addiction, and immense bloodshed.
A dark, dark place.
Yet today, if you were to visit Colombia, you would find that it has been completely transformed into a family theme park. Tourists willingly pay up to 65,000 pesos for a safari ticket. They take their kids to see the descendants of Escobar's hippos, they look at life-size dinosaur statues he built, and they visit a museum dedicated to the drug lord himself.
That is just so wild to think about.
It is. What does it say about human nature and how we as a society process history? That the deep, traumatic scars of narco-terrorism can be so quickly paved over, repackaged, and sold as a sunny vacation destination.
Thank you for listening. Do not forget to click like and subscribe and write your opinion in the comments section.